All directors of First Bank Holding PLC and the First Bank Nigeria Limited have been sacked by the Central Bank of Nigeria. Governor of the Apex Bank, Godwin Emefiele, cites insider abuse, inside credit access, and breakdown of corporate governance as reasons behind the sack. The CBN governor, however, reinstated Shola Adenutan as the managing director of the interim board. The CBN has queried First Bank over the appointment of Gbenga Shobo as the new managing director without its approval.
The management of the Central Bank of Nigeria, in line with its powers conferred on it by the Banks and Other Financial Institutions Act 2020, has approved and hereby directs as follows. 1. Immediate removal of all the directors of First Bank of Nigeria Limited and First Bank of Nigeria Holdings PLC. 2. The appointment of the following persons as directors in First Bank of Nigeria Limited and First Bank of Nigeria Holdings PLC. For the Holdco, 1. Chairman will be Remi Babalola. 2. Dr. Fatade Abiodun Oluwole. 3. Kufo Doshekun. 4. Remi Lasaki. 5. Dr. Alimi Abdulrazak. 6. Alhaji Ahmed Mudibu. 7. Alhaji Khalifa Imam. 8. Mr. Peter Aliogu. 9. Uke Eke, Managing Director. For the bank, we will now have from today Chairman as Tunde Hassan Udukale. 2. Tokumbo Martins. 3. Uche Nwokedi. 4. Adekunle Shonola. 5. Isioma Ogodazi. 6. Ebenezer Ulufowoshi. 7. Ishaya Elijah Dodo. 8. Dr. Shola Adeduntan, Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer. 9. Gbenga Shobo, Deputy Managing Director. 10. Remi Oni, Executive Director, we understand, had just been appointed Chairman of PENCOM and has proceeded on terminal retirement or terminal leave. So we will expect that this board will fill this vacancy shortly. 11. Abdullahi Ibrahim, Executive Director. We decided to spare the MDs. We felt that because we've worked with them from 2016 till now, what we saw was more of a breakdown on governance and insider abuse by shareholders, and we felt that we needed to stamp our authorities to reappoint them.
Well, Mr. Emefiele there saying what he observed as, misgovernance and abuse, and then doing the only thing a regulatory and supervisory body ought to do, stepping in to clean up the act. And I'm sure you like to give an overview of a situation, but I'm just going to say what jumped out at me is the bank recapitalization that he mentioned. Now, 2 years ago, the central bank unveiled their 5-year plan, and that included bank recapitalization because the Charles Soludo recapitalization had since diminished. You'll recall then the banks had to go up to 2.5 billion naira, which today is not an awful lot of money. So I think they're going to start the ball rolling because that was mentioned in regard to First Bank. I've been wondering when that's going to be kick-started, and it appears to be now. So I think this is quite satisfactory, especially for depositors, especially for minority shareholders, to know and rest assured that their interests will be protected by the regulatory body.
Okay, well, I think a number of questions. One, has the CBN done the right thing? Is the approach of the CBN justifiable? I think the obvious answer to that is yes. Under the extant laws, the CBN has the powers of regulatory oversight over the banking sector. to ensure financial stability, to protect the financial space in Nigeria, even if persons have raised questions in the past about regulatory risk being the most serious problem in Nigeria. But in this particular instance, from the arguments that the CBN, through Godwin Emefiele, has put forward, it looks like here they are acting in the best interest of, one, the affected institutions, the best interest of the financial sector, and also in the best interest of shareholders and minority, particularly minority shareholders. Now, what are the arguments put forward by the CBN? The CBN says that since 2016, the First Bank and the First Bank Nigeria Holdings have been both under regulatory forbearance and what Emefiele referred to as corporate restructuring. And if anything must happen in that bank and the holding company, the HoldCo, there must be CBN approval. But in this particular case, we're told that on April 27, after the annual general meeting of the First Bank of Nigeria, certain decisions were taken by the board. If you look at some of those decisions, yes, they declared dividends for shareholders, very generous, volume of dividends. But at the same time, the following day, they then proceeded to act without regulatory approval to remove the managing director of the First Bank of Nigeria. At the time, Dr. Shola Adenutan, and replaced him. Now, if you read the story in the papers, particularly this day, the CBN governor said several phone calls were made to the chairman, the then chairman of the holding company, that's Mr. Oba Otudeko, that he refused to pick calls. We were told that emissaries were sent to him. He refused to respond. We were told that further steps were taken to persuade him and the board not to act without regulatory approval. Now, the chairman of the First Bank of Nigeria, Mrs. Ibukun Awosika, we were also told that the regulator tried to reach out to her and she did not respond. Now, so you see that at that level, this is an attempt by the regulator to assert itself. And the regulator asserting itself is premised on the point made by Emefiele at the press conference that he had yesterday, that we cannot afford to have a situation in the banking sector, in the financial sector, where an individual will claim to be above the laws of the land or will claim to be superior to the regulatory authority. So the action that has been taken is one of the CBN asserting itself under the law. Is also targeted at two specific individuals, Mr. Oba Otudeko and Mrs. Ibukun Awosika. But I do not think that we have seen the end of it. What are the options available to Mr. Otudeko and Mrs. Awosika? Well, they probably will go to court. They probably will go to court immediately to seek an injunction, restraining the CBN from reversing the decision of the board under Oba Otudeko's watch. So it will be interesting to see the fallout of this. However, I think we should note the point that the CBN says that it is acting to prevent systemic financial dislocation because the First Bank and its holding company are very strategic, very systemic, players within the financial sector, and that the entire system could be destabilized. So we cannot argue with that. That looks like a good point. The second point that we cannot argue with is Mr. Emefiele saying that he's protecting the interests of minority shareholders and that, shareholders and investors in the bank should not panic. And when I read that part of the story, I said, okay, Mr. Emefiele must have been listening to us yesterday, including some of us who have dormant accounts in First Bank.
Yeah.
No, don't query how much amount is in that dormant account. Every interest must be protected. But the market, one other point is that the market reacted.
Yeah.
The share price of First Bank fell by about minus tick size of about minus 6.7%. So this is where we are. But my position on this is that we have not seen the end of the story. We would like to see how the affected persons will react. But Dr. Shola Adenutan has been described in some other reports as a friend of the CBN. And Mr. UAK of First Bank Holdings, Nigeria Holdings, has also been described as a friend of the CBN, and that these two persons have been used by the CBN since 2016 to try to, protect the bank against what the CBN refers to as insider trading, insider abuse, and the lack of a capital adequacy ratio, and the problems with the non-performing loans ratio, which the CBN now says it will address. We hope that the CBN will take consequential steps and that this will not end at the level of ego. It will not end, we hope, at the level of Emefiele trying to say, I will show about Tudeko that I'm the CBN governor, because I could see that ego part of it. We should focus on the policies, we should focus on the principles, and Emefiele should continue to protect the interests of minority shareholders and depositors, including owners of dormant accounts.
These are accounts in trust. But I mean, just to buttress on the severity of the issue, real quickly, something that really caught me, what he said was this. They've got 31 million accounts. You can't push that away. 31 million accounts, depositors fund in First Bank. They have over 20% of NIBS transaction. That's online transaction.
22%.
22%.
To be specific.
Yeah, of NIBS transaction all over the country. And that's to show you that it is very integral for the sustenance of that bank. But for me, I'll ask a question. You think this is only about First Bank? There's still some other banks that are having corporate governance issues. And like I like to put a caveat out there, time will tell. It's just a matter of time. Somebody sent me a message. Yesterday said, we are watching First Bank season film live on TV.
Some people have even identified some banks.
Yeah.
It will not be fair to mention names.
We can't mention them.
On
so
television.
Only time will tell. But one thing you can rest assured is that as all of this play out in the banking sector and other sectors across the country, political, security, your number one station, the Arise News channel, the home of global news, is definitely there for you. And Arise will put this together for you blow by blow. We took that live yesterday, that delivery as it was being made by the CBN governor. But most importantly, we got you covered in everything right here on the Arise News channel. All right, we'll move on to Michael Wilson. We'll talk to Michael Wilson in London. Michael, pleasure to have you.
Morning. Yes, indeed. A lot of data actually to think about this morning, not least of which the US GDP figures yesterday, which came in at 6.4%. Now, that was slightly, believe it or not, under what a lot of people had expected. A lot of sub-data under there, digging through it. The headline number dragged down by falling inventories, suggesting logistical constraints because the economy is just building again, and also chip shortages too. That's really hitting everybody all the way around the world. That's going to be a continuing narrative for some time. In Asia, good results from them. China manufacturing, non-manufacturing PMI is quite good, and by conversely, the China Caixin manufacturing PMI rose well above what was expected, which shows that there's a bit of divergence there, but it does show that China is well on the way to recovery. It does start its five-day Labor Day holiday tomorrow, and that may play a big part in actually what's happening there. So it's going to be fairly quiet through Asia till the middle of next week because of various holidays and so on. Another headwind for China is the continuing clampdown on China big tech. According to reports I'm reading this morning, that clampdown on big tech companies has been extended to JD.com and Didi Chuxing, both of those, these sort of monopolistic practices that we're seeing from China's central bank is giving big headwinds to the economy right now, and also to investors thinking about investing in high-tech stocks. Another headwind, as I mentioned, chips. However, NIO, the Chinese car manufacturer, the chairman said he reckons that deliveries will start picking up in the third quarter of the year. So that'll help a lot of manufacturers around the world. Japan is still deflationary, still wondering about where it's going to get this longed-for inflation. Unemployment is falling, but in that deflationary environment, environment right now, that clearly caps wage pressures. Although underlyingly, Japan Inc., which used to be an enormous economy, used to be the second or the third biggest in the world, isn't now, after China, of course, seems to be doing okay. So basically, what all this mix is saying, it seems to me, is that there is a growing sense of economies getting back going again. Let's look to the United States as we're talking about that. We saw those GDP figures. Look at Amazon, mega results from them. It's huge, soaring 44%. That's March sales, soaring 44% higher than they were ago. Few companies have benefited so much from the pandemic-fueled online shopping. Also, Prime Video as well, as it turns 10. It's 10 years old, Prime Video. 175 million Prime members. And you don't just get movies, of course, you get deliveries and so on. And unsurprisingly, physical store sales have also fallen there. Twitter a bit disappointed, actually. The company released its fourth quarter earnings, and although it has been growing the total number of what they describe as monetizable daily users by 7 million, since Trump was, believe it or not, since President Trump was removed from it, they've noticed a lot less activity. So good and bad there. Global market overview then, overnight. Markets, futures markets in the United States not doing too well, but the Dow Jones up considerably after great Caterpillar results. You'd expect that. A very old company, that, but solid, not to mention the stuff that they make, but solid results there. That's really about it as far as the global thing is concerned. As far as UK is concerned, Barclays have reported they're not quite as good as other banks have been reporting, but they have actually made a lot of provisions for bad loans because of the pandemic and so on. But they have recouped a lot of profit from their investment bank and also their mortgage business. 60% of UK businesses rather would like to have hybrid working, so there may not be a big return to the office. Still in the UK, bars and restaurants are not able to recruit the kind of staff that they'd actually want to do. Venues are going to be open, pubs are going to be open, restaurants and so on, bars are going to be open, and they're expecting huge demand, but it's not going to be met apparently because recruitment and people actually leaving the country because of Brexit, overseas workers coming here to earn a few pounds and then going back home, they haven't come because of the pandemic and also because of Brexit. Shops are closing as well around the UK. British Retail Consortium is seeing a continuing soaring rise in shop vacancies and so on. We are going to be looking at very, very different ways of shopping. Oil, prices a bit higher as a result, not only of the pandemic being over, but also because of those US GDP figures, basically, and they're looking at that US recovery. That should fuel it as well. Gold has been retreating slightly. Who needs safe haven when you've got impressive economic results of this? And finally, I would turn your attention to cobalt. Now, cobalt, very, very controversial this. It's for electric cars. It's being mined. It's mined in the DRC, and there is a lot of complaints about human rights practices there, particularly about those miners. VW and Tesla are going to reduce its use. They've been saying China and Glencore are the big miners in DRC. I think we'll be hearing a lot more about this story as the year progresses. That's the global view.
There was a question I asked you yesterday that we didn't get to, which is this space war between SpaceX and Blue Origin, between Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. But today I would like to add to it the amazing story that you brought this morning. Amazon says it's going through a golden age. It's making plenty of profit, and the thinking is that will continue. And Amazon now says, workers will get a rise in wages between 50 cents and $3. But on this program, I'd always raise the question of whether or not Jeff Bezos was just being hypocritical when he issued that letter to the shareholders. Is this really this so-called raise in wages? Is it really an attempt to address the concerns of the workers following the union action in Bessemer or Alabama? Or is this just another demonstration of hypocrisy? Because many of those companies in the U.S., they need more workers as the economy recovers. And you probably need to raise the wages a little bit so that you can get workers. Secondly, UK and Norway. Fishing was one of the sticking points in the negotiations, the Brexit trade agreement negotiations. And now we're told that Norway and the UK cannot reach an agreement for 2021. How does that affect the national dish? No more cod, in the chippies for Britain.
Right. So first of all, then, fish and chips. Fish is not something that people actually buy a huge amount of. Yes, we enjoy fish and chips, but it's a very, very tiny part of the national the national appetite. It tends to be for Indian and Chinese, basically. If you really want to know, nothing really to do with fish and chips. Although it's quite a common thought, but no, it's not. It's not a huge part of consumption as far as the UK and Norway is concerned. Brexit did not allow any agreement to be reached. Both countries have laid out where they want to go with this. It'll be part of continuing discussion. I imagine that kind of literal discussion, i.e. around the shores of countries, will continue for an enormous amount of time. As far as Amazon wages are concerned, yeah, the unions step back again. My continuing thought about this is if the unions are going to step up and become part of management, then they will get the kind of wages that they want. I don't think Amazon will pay people more than it actually needs to. Why should it? It doesn't need to do that because people are still looking for work. And as you talk, and we've talked regularly about in the United States, they're still 8 million jobs short of where they were pre-pandemic. So there's a lot of slack in that labour market. Then there's no necessity to increase wages. Jeff Bezos may be saying that to his shareholders because his shareholders themselves take a fairly responsible view of companies right now. The shareholders are also stakeholders as well. But anything moving on that, I think it'll take quite a time. And similarly with the space race as well. I mean, this is rich men playing games. You know, we had the space race in the 60s, didn't we? When President Kennedy said that, that was really the defining moment as far as space is concerned. You even have countries like India. I mean, given what is India doing in the space race when it should be looking to its citizens and trying to get them through COVID and so on. They're still in the space race as well, and China too. And we rejoiced, didn't we, that NASA had managed to extract some oxygen from carbon dioxide on Mars. These are big, headline events. But as far as they've got anything to do with the real world, not a lot, I would guess.
Yeah,
it's hubris. Yeah. Mr. Wilson, you know that. Yeah, even the UAE is in the space race. Everybody wants to be the first. Exactly like you said, we're back in the 60s with the USSR and America.
All right, and it's just that very funny, stupid mindset of one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind when it doesn't really add to what is on ground as we speak today. But let me talk about what's on ground. Let's come back to terra firma here. Biden has put out this plan. He wants to help American family. He's got cumulative plan. He wants to spend $6 trillion. Isn't that going to overheat the economy? He wants to get that money for capital gains tax, 39.7%, which people are looking at. There might be tax avoidance. There might be other issues. I know Biden wants to be like Roosevelt again with a New Deal and all of that. But is this what is really right for this season? That's going to be my first question. And my second question to you will be about cobalt and electric cars. When is Africa going to share in the wealth it's churning out to the world? DRC is still a basket case. Is there regulation? Is there governance structure?
Right. So first of all, DRC, well, that's down to the local government. What they need to do is to actually play hardball with Glencore and with the Chinese. They're no doubt getting a lot of money as both these companies exploit what happens in the DRC. I'm saying that I have no solution to it. I'm just alerting you to it. The price is rising. It's up 40% this year. It could become a lot more than that. If it is rising, it's down to the DRC government to say, right, you're exploiting a very precious national commodity. About time you started paying for it. About time we got a slice of those rewards. So that's what I say about that. As far as Biden's concerned, I think the clear signal yesterday and the day before is that big government is back. The small government, the government of competitiveness that thrived in the United States, before Reagan and through Reagan and all the rest of them actually didn't really deliver when push came to shove. We couldn't have predicted the pandemic, but that's what's laid waste. Now he's saying we do need a new America. This is a new generational thing that he's trying to do. I don't think too many people in the United States will be crying over higher taxes because he's put a lid on that of 400,000. Now, whether that actually gets through the legislation or not, that's a completely different matter. So there we are. That's the global view about that.
All right, thank you so much for your time, Michael, as always. So go to Rotus. Rotus, how's it going?
Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Tundu. You know what we're going to be talking about.
The season film on TV.
Yeah,
I've seen on TV.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. Let's listen to the central bank governor at yesterday's press conference, which Arise News exclusively covered, talking about insider loans.
The significant improvement in the bank's financial condition with positive trajectory of financial soundness indicators, the insider, in this case, these insider-related facilities had remained problematic. The insiders who took loans in the bank with controlling influence on the board of directors failed to adhere to the terms for the restructuring of their credit facilities, which contributed to the poor financial state of this bank. The CBN's recent target examination as at December 31, 2020, revealed that insider loans were materially non-compliant with the terms of the restructure. For example, non-perfection of lien on shares and collateral arrangements that CBN had insisted on for over 3 years, despite several regulatory reminders. The bank has not also divested its non-permissible holdings in non-financial entities in line with regulatory directives.
CBN governor now backing Dr. Adedison, who was removed and now reinstated, and talking about speculating on why he suspected he was removed. Take a listen.
The Central Bank of Nigeria has been satisfied working with Dr. Adedunton on a stabilization regime for First Bank since 2016. He had played his role to the best of our knowledge, the best that could be done of a professional banker. He had insisted on governance being put in place, and we suspect, because I like to use the word suspect, that it is because he had stood his grounds on certain decisions that are not in favor of major shareholders of the bank, that they felt hot and thought he should be removed. This is against what we stand for.
We call it pick my call. Take a listen to this.
When I heard about this, I had cause first to call the chairman of the holding company, Mr. Obao Tudeko. He picked my call. I reminded him about the regulatory intervention and forbearance regime in the bank. I called him a second time and had on another phone one of the shareholders on that line listening to me begging Dr. Otudeko that he should not take that decision. He insisted on taking that decision. We hung up the phone. I sent that shareholder back to the office of Mr. Obao Tudeko to appeal to him to please suspend decision to remove the MD. He refused to see the shareholder. I feel we had done our best and that we would not allow a shareholder who feels that he cannot subject himself to regulatory control and authority to remain as a director of the bank. So we didn't have any choice but to take this decision. As we speak, the chairman of the bank was queried, Ibukun Awoshika. We are yet to receive any response. In any case, I would imagine that that response is no longer necessary.
Now, let's take a look at this shareholding structure. In fact, over 24 hours, this has now changed because Dr. Tudeko is no longer the chair. But if you look at this shareholding structure, the shareholder he's referring to in that clip we just said is the gentleman in the middle, Oye Hassan Odukale, who now has replaced Ibukun Awoshika as chairman of the bank, which is under the holdco. So industry sources tell me authoritatively that the gentleman in the middle was the one that the central bank governor who, using that human angle of, even though you are the regulator overseeing the bank, even though you've essentially kept this bank alive since 2016, provided liquidity support, provided regulatory forbearance, even though I think of the BOIFA Act, section 35 or so, subsection 2, allows the central bank the powers to remove and appoint as it pleases. On top of all that, he still appealed on a human level with that gentleman in the middle, and he was rebuffed. Let's take a look at the stock exchange, the losers from yesterday. I think Doctor already referred to this. Now, something on what he's talking about is, okay, you see FBNH at number 3 there, down by 6.7%. This is as of yesterday. Honeywell Flour Mills at the bottom also fell by 3.7%, and that is part of the Honeywell group, of which Dr. Tudeko is chair. So those are two stocks, and the thing is, with this happening yesterday, we still have stocks that are going to trade on the exchange. So it is anyone's guess how investors are going to react. The central bank governor, he put all confidence into First Bank, saying that over 31 million depositors funds are 10 times shareholders funds. So he talked to the bank and said, look, we supported the bank. No one should panic. But it will be interesting to see how investors react today to not just FBNH, but also flour mills. So let's see how that happens when trading takes place. Now, Dr. Tudeko, the next thing now is, of course, Honeywell's loan and what the central bank governor was talking about with respect to the lien regularization, the need for First Bank to regularize the lien on the shares, which are used as collateral for Honeywell's loan from First Bank. Now, its industry sources say that the outstanding balance is about 70 billion naira. I've been told authoritatively by industry insiders that he's paid off about 40 billion about 30 billion of that. He's paid off about 30 billion, and there's a balance remaining of about 40 billion on that outstanding loan. So, now it's a question of what now happens, because if you remember the letter that we referred to yesterday that the central bank sent to First Bank, they told them you need to regularize the lien on these shares, and in fact, this loan is now payable. So, I don't know if you've watched wildlife documentaries. I'm a big wildlife person, and I'm particularly fascinated by constrictors. The squeeze now is going to be felt on Dr. Tudeko and going forward. So that's essentially our update.
I would like to just ask you a number of questions,
yes,
because I already commented on this. Now, the loan, the debt that is being owed by Honeywell is about 77 billion. The CBN gave a deadline of April 29 for the repayment of that loan. So you said industry insiders claim that 40 billion has been paid. But the CBN was asking for the full
amount.
The full amount.
Right.
What do you think will happen going forward? Second, reputation is involved. The reputation specifically of Mr. Oba Otudeko and the reputation of Mrs. Ibukun Awoshika. Do you think that they are likely to take steps to defend their reputation, maybe by seeking an injunction? 3, well, I mean, when they showed the pictures on the screen, Mr. Otudeko was actually not the one in the middle. He was the first person on the screen. It was Oye Hassan Odukale that was in the middle. Now, do you also think that there's some politics involved in it, in terms of the politics of the Nigerian state? Because First Bank, yes, may account for 22% of NIBS's activity, but it's also the oldest bank, 127 years there. And it's not as if Mr. Otudeko is just, somebody coming into the game. Do you think that there is politics at another level involved in this, beyond the facts?
Doctor, the only part where I think politics plays a role is how Dr. Tudeko thought this could play out without the regulator being involved. we talk a lot about the enabling business environment in Nigeria. As a business, any steps you take in this country, the regulator is always at the forefront of your brain, because there's complaints that, I'm not talking about the central bank here. I'm talking about in general the business environment, whether you're in manufacturing, whether you're in medical services. We talk about enabling business environment because the regulator is at every step putting checks on the movement of business, and businesses say they want more freedom. So when you put that within the context of the moves that were made yesterday, when you think about the position that the central bank holds as a regulator, how Dr. Tudeko thought this could go down without the regulator getting involved is what is seen as bizarre. And so the only way that people are trying to figure it out is that maybe his status in the country, political affiliations, made him think that he could get through with this. To the reputational side of things for him and Ibukun Awokrisha, I would assume that they've got public relations people that are going to try to work this out. You already talked about them possibly going to court. But I'm not a lawyer. That's going to be tough because, again, I believe it's BOIFA Act, Section 30, subsection 2. Central bank has the powers to do this. So that's going to be tough. So maybe they can try to wash it up, but it's going to be a tough fight.
The debt, the 77 billion.
Yes, the 77 billion. Well, look, that deadline, I mean, come on. How do you pay that off in 24 hours? Maybe with the hammer that was dropped yesterday, Dr. Tudeko will sit up now and maybe try to, I guess, humble himself and try to work out some more time on paying that off.
All right. So, Rotus, I want to bring in the angle of what a lot of people have been saying, that this is not only happening in First Bank. A lot of banks in this country are replete with this. I mean, we can't name names.
Insider loans?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
It's just a matter of time before all of this comes out there, to the public glare. You want to speak around that? And secondly, what will this be like? What will this be like, most importantly, for the furtherance of good governance, which has always been a problem across every sector, not only the banking sector in Nigeria. Will this be like a big dent, and you can't cross the line on good governance no matter who you are in this country? Yeah,
Rufai, yes. I mean,
corporate governance.
Corporate governance.
And again, insider abuse is what the Governor Mefele was talking about. This is major. I mean, this is the biggest bank, in terms of assets, third, but as far as prestige and the history of the bank, the legacy, for him to bring this hammer down, it is going to make a lot of other directors sit up. So for those who already have outstanding loans that have been abused, that have not been regularizing the lien on the shares or whatever collateral is backing them up, I take it that every single bank in this country has sat up and taken attention paid attention to what has happened. And as that doctor's question is lingering, what now happens to that deadline? If they bring the hammer down again and make him pay off, rather, they make that, they seize those shares, that shareholding structure you just showed. Now that now shifts, and everybody should pay attention to Mike Adenuga. Nobody's mentioning it, but with the names that were mentioned yesterday, things could shift as far as control is concerned. But for as far as corporate governance is concerned, the central bank has made. They couldn't be more clear with banks sitting up going forward. Yesterday was a bombshell that everyone is going to take notice of.
So what's the next bombshell? Because you'll recall 2004, I believe it was, Dr. Soludo's recapitalization bombshell. Right. It was not 2.5 billion to 25 billion, like I said earlier. It was 5 billion to 25 billion. And Godwin Emefiele did say 2 years ago that he would be undertaking that exercise sometime in the next 5 years. He mentioned that in regard to First Bank, but do you think First Bank is just starting the ball rolling, that all banks are going to have to
sit up, yeah. So in terms of the recapitalization, it's necessary. I mean, he mentioned their capital adequacy ratio for systemically important financial institutions, SIFI, 15%. They were below that. This is back in 2016. NPL ratio, non-performing loans, threshold is 5%. They were at 23, 24. Wow. So that was, again, back in 2016. Again, the central bank has now, if you look at their 2020 financials, the central bank has assisted them. Those numbers are now in line with where they should be. But that recapitalization is important. That's what's next. So, Tundu, yes, the answer is yes. First Bank is the signal now for everybody else to sit up. So from corporate governance to recapitalization to just plain by the book, this really does set a marker.
Wow. And we don't want any other. I mean, I don't want to mention another bank that was taken over recently by the CBN.
No.
We don't want that case again. We
don't want that case. But a good look again. I mentioned Polaris Bank.
Polaris Bank. Oh yeah, you mentioned it.
That was good news. Polaris Bank, they released their results, full year financials for 2020, and they've been doing well. So that was an example of the central bank supporting a bank and propping them up, and it's good news. So this is why Gordon Emefiele was saying that it is important for the system to keep things in place. So the central bank it's backing the banks up, it's supporting them, but you must adhere to your corporate governance structure.
All right, exciting stuff, Rotus. We'll keep watching the season film. Hey, goodness me, this is where you need Nollywood.
Yes,
this has to be on Netflix.
We need a movie for this. It's dramatic stuff.
All right, thank you so much for your time, my friend. We'll go for a quick break. We'll come back. We'll talk about this one more. All right, welcome back to the Morning Show right here on the Rise News channel. For updates on COVID-19 pandemic, Adeswa Moro is here with us. Adeswa, great to have you.
Thank you, Rufai. Good to be here. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Dr. Abati, and good morning, Tundum.
Good morning.
Well, the global tally for COVID-19 cases has now surpassed 150 million globally. And this is less than 13 months since it was declared a pandemic. And more than 3.16 million people have died from the coronavirus worldwide as well. On Wednesday alone, 905,000 new infections were recorded globally. And despite rapid development of multiple vaccines for the virus, there are a number of countries bringing their COVID-19 infections under control, I must say, but there are still hundreds of thousands of new cases every day. Now, some countries are imposing their strictest lockdowns since the pandemic, such as Turkey, while others are relaxing measures, such as Hong Kong and France, despite infection rates still in those countries. Let's come to Nigeria, where 62 new infections and no deaths were recorded in the last 24 hours. Lagos alone recorded more than half of those cases. Nigeria has now recorded over 165,000 cases and over 2,000 deaths. Now, India has indeed become a basket case and the perfect example of how not to handle the pandemic. John Inkalgasong, head of the Africa CDC, says the situation in India should be a wake-up call for Africa. He's urging the government and people of the continent not to let their guards down just yet. Now, he says Africa does not have the human, financial, material, or medical resources should the continent find itself in a situation such as India. Basically, the message for Africa is that prevention is not only better, but cheaper. Some 17 million vaccine doses have been administered across the continent, and I can tell you that countries that have administered the most jabs are Morocco, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Ghana, and Kenya. Now, a similar stark warning has been issued by the WHO to European countries planning to relax COVID-19 measures. It comes as the French President Emmanuel Macron unveiled a roadmap for a progressive unwinding of the country's lockdown over the next 2 months. Meanwhile, the EU, staying with the bloc, the EU's COVID-19 certificate, a document to enable EU-wide restriction-free travel, moved closer to materialization yesterday after the European Parliament agreed to the basic terms and conditions, but further negotiations are needed to ensure its operationalization. And this is good news welcomed by travel and tourism. They are happy to hear this because, of course, the summer travels are just around the corner. Now, in the countries with robust vaccination programs, hesitancy has already emerged as a key obstacle to their successes. And I can tell you that from boxes of eggs to tax rebates, donuts, to chicken wings, free rides, or cash prizes, vaccine incentives are a normal around the world. Public health officials say these efforts are crucial to reach people who haven't been immunized yet, whether because they are hesitant or because they are not able to make an appointment or get to vaccination site. Now, in the US, Chicago is sending specially equipped buses into neighborhoods. Detroit is offering $50 to people who give other people a ride to vaccination sites. In Russia, those over 60 in Moscow will now receive a certificate of about $13, and this is redeemable in stores and restaurants. Russia is dealing with widespread vaccine hesitancy. Only about 5% of its population has been fully vaccinated. The US is also going through the same thing, although it has fully vaccinated about 30% of its population. But some polls came out yesterday to say that about 2/3 of Americans actually don't want to get vaccinated.
Quickly, Russia, well, is a bit stingy, but I see the effort being made by the mayor of Moscow to deal with vaccine hesitancy, because people who are 60 and above in Russia generally have been very reluctant to take the vaccine. In Moscow, which has a population of 12 million, only about 400,000 60-plus year-olds have taken the vaccine. So they are offering actually $17 that you can redeem in stores and all of that. But that is quite small compared to what you have in Detroit, in the U.S., where to address the challenge of vaccine hesitancy, people who drive people to vaccination centers are given $50. The state of West Virginia is even doing much better. In West Virginia, young adults are given as much as $100 just to take the first jab, but and in Washington, people are given food vouchers. In New York, they are given marijuana. You take a shot for a jab. So, but the big issue beyond the incentives being offered is that you find, even in the United States, where, as you pointed out, 2/3 of adults in the population have been vaccinated, where people are still being mobilized. And there is specially targeted efforts to get people out there and to address the challenge of vaccination. As for India, India is in a very terrible state. There is a short supply now of grave diggers. The available grave diggers are working 24 hours, round the clock. Cremation centers have been overstretched. In Mumbai, in New Delhi state, look, they have decided for the next 3 days to suspend vaccination because there are no vaccines anymore. But, the thing about India, however, is that with the figures going up to almost 400,000 as at this morning, in terms of the daily infection rate, I think the good news is the global solidarity that we talked about yesterday. The U.S. yesterday sent 400 oxygen tanks. Within the next week, the U.S. is pledging to send more. Japan is also there. Germany is also supporting India. So I think John Ikenga's song of the AU African Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is right, that Africa needs to learn from what is going on in India. And it's just saying, in the face of supply problems, we need to wear masks, we need to observe the basic guidelines and protocols. And I think that that's a very strong message.
And I quickly want to talk about the madness still going on in India amidst all of those global support. Do you know that the Elite Cricket League, the IPL, is still going on? They haven't stopped it as the spread of COVID-19 increases in India. Yes. That's to show you the leadership madness and the greed that is really killing people as regards this. Thank you so much for your time at this one. I really appreciate you.